Hey guys, today I just want to say a huge thank you to everyone that checked out our last video and taken a look at the new Wicked Stencils plugin that we developed for Photoshop. The response has been awesome and the feedback has been good so far. So for today's video, what I really want to do is make a video showing the whole process of how I use it, along with a whole bunch of little tips and techniques so you can get the most out of this little plugin. So I'll be showing you the whole process of making the stencils in Photoshop, then cutting them out on your Cricut, and then painting them with a whole bunch of little tips along the way. So feel free to skip to any part of the video that you're interested in because it might be a bit of a long one. And let's jump into Photoshop. So for today's video, I'll be using this image of the rock as it's got some really good details in it. You can see some awesome skin pores, and it's also got some really dark shadows as well as highlights in it. So this will be a perfect image for creating some awesome stencils. So the first thing I like to do once I've brought it into Photoshop is to select the pen tool and remove the background. That just makes the process so much easier. So just using the pen tool, what I do is click and click drag to get the handles. And what I do is work my way around the whole subject, getting a really nice edge to work to. So I'm going to fast forward this part of the video as this can take a little while. Okay, once you finish creating your selection with a pen tool, the next thing you want to do is hit the Paths tab and then select the marching ants. I'm just going to move this out of the way so I can actually select it and then hit the delete key. Whoops, wrong one. So what I want to do is go Control Z, Control Shift I to inverse the selection so you get the marching ants around the outside too, and then hit the delete so you get rid of the background. Now the reason why I use the pen tool instead of the magic wand or any of the other tools is you get the cleanest, crispest edge using this way. So you always get a clean edge when you create your stencils as well. So the next thing after you've removed the background, I like to do is go to File, New, and create a document that's actually the size of the artwork I want to create. For today's one, I'm actually going to be using an A3 sized, simply because that's the largest size you can actually cut on a Cricut machine. So that'll be perfect for this artwork. So once I do that, I go back to the image, hit this move tool at the top, and then select my artwork and move it across to my A3 document. And as you can see, it's actually pretty small. Holding Alt and T to transform, and then hold down Alt and drag the top corner. You can scale it up to the size of the document. So that should be big enough, I think. And then hit the tick once you're happy with that. What we can do is Windows, Workspace. I just want to reset so it looks exactly like yours. And then what I'm going to do is double click on the background, hit OK, delete that because we don't want that. We want a transparent background. So we just have our subject in the foreground. And then we can actually start to create our stencils. So now I can go to Plugin, Wicked Stencil Plugin, click on Wicked Stencils. And then it'll pop up with this little tab up here. So we go Show Stencils, wait for it to load, and bam, we got some stencils. Okay, that's looking a bit weird. Oh, so I was using my Wicked Stencils to create a different image, and it's loaded those same settings I was using last time. So this is going to be a bit of a good or bad thing. If you actually want to reset this and go back to the first settings, so what I'm going to do is reset my Wicked Stencil plugin, and you can just do that by going to Plugin, Wicked Stencils, and Reset. And what that will do is it'll reset the options back to the default ones. So now if I click that again, these are usually the default settings that it will come up with. So if you get a bit lost, you can always reset and start over. So the next little tip that I want to show you guys is in this little folder, what I've done is I've created some settings for each number of layers. So 2 layers, 3 layers, 4 layers, 5 layers. And if I click on one of these, what it does is it shows you the values and also the little code that you can use to set up the colors as well. So I'm gonna save this little folder in the description of this video. So if you need these, then feel free to use them. For today's video, let's keep it at 6 layers. So let's use this preset setting. And I'm just going to copy these values into these boxes here. So let's reduce this down to 6. And then what I can do is refer back to that little image. 40, 40, 70, 100, 130, 160. So we can type this into 40, 70, what were the other numbers? That was 100, 130, and 160. So the next thing we can do is set the colors. So the first one was black, nice and easy. And then we can also type in these codes. So 3D, you can type that in here, just go 3D, 3D, 3D. Okay. I think the next one was 676767. 848484 and B2 B2 B2, and then the last one will be white for our highlights, and I might just make that a really light gray instead of pure white. And there you go, that's how we can set up our 6 layers nice and easily. The other thing I might do just for this image, just so it's easier to cut the stencils, is maybe adjust the edge detail and increase it a little bit so the edges are a bit smoother and easier to cut out on the Cricut. So keep increasing. If you want to see the preview a little bigger, you just drag the bottom corner. And if you want to see the corner markers, maybe switch them to black. Oh, that's much better. You can see the edges are much smoother, and this will be much easier to add bridges and to cut out on the Cricut as well. So that's looking pretty good. The next thing we might need to do is adjust our corner markers. So corner offset is looking pretty good. I might decrease the padding a little bit so the corner markers are much closer to the image. And that is looking pretty good. That's nice and close there. And I think this one is pretty much ready to go. So I'm going to hit the OK button and let that little plugin do its magic. And just like that, we got all of our layers set up and ready to go. So the next thing I want to show you guys is how to go through, clean them up, and get them ready to export and cut on your Cricut. So one by one, I usually just switch them off. And starting at the bottom, I like to check the black. Now with this black, if I actually move this up to the top, I would actually like to paint this last. And the reason why I like to do that is so I don't get any overspray on the black, and the black is really nice and crisp, so you get a lot of contrast. And then I'll switch that off and then check the bottom layer, and that is looking pretty good. The only thing I like to do is combine that together with the top one, so with this black. If I go select, color range, just select that black, switch it off, and then fill it in on this layer. And what you'll notice, the brush hardness to 100 as well, and just fill all of this in, is that the first layer will be much easier to paint because it'll fit in all of these little island areas that we would have previously had. And just like that, our first layer is done, and this way we get a nice clear boundary for our first layer, and this one will be super easy to paint. So then when we go up to our next one, it's even easier. And next, we can sort of work our way to the highlights. And then finally add our black, which will really just make it pop. So let's go back through these ones and see if we need to add any bridges, and I'll show you how to do that as well. Just a couple over here to hold this darker area in on this ear, and maybe for this eyebrow and eye. So let me show you how to do that quickly. So for that process, what I like to do is hit E for the eraser tool, and then switch on the layer above it to see where I can actually add some bridges. So I'm going to start with the ear over here, so it's easier for you guys to see. And I think the best place to add a bridge over here is just over here. So that way when I switch off the layer above, this little bridge here will hold all of this in place. And let's see if we can add another one as well. So I think if we went around there, we could add a bridge in that spot there, and that's going to hold this little detail in here. And then we could add another one going straight down here as well. And just round off those edges to make it look natural. So now what we have is a bridge holding it at the top, one holding it through the center, and one through the bottom. So all of that has a bit of support holding it in place. Now the next thing you want to do is see if we can get some other details in as well. So I think we might end up losing these details here unless we're a bit sneaky about it. And what we could do is, with a really thin brush, add a little bridge around here like that. If you really wanted to keep this detail in there. This one here, I think you might have to lose it. It's just in the middle of nowhere, I think, and it isn't really adding too much to the artwork. So if I just hit I to select the surrounding color, I could just fill that in, fill in these details, and I think that would look pretty okay. So now we can actually add a couple of bridges to the eye as well. So let's work our way up there and add a couple of bridges in this area. So switching on the layer above it, switching it off again, I think going back to the eraser, we could possibly add a bridge from here, straight across the bridge of the nose to there, just like that. Maybe make it a little bit thicker. That's the easiest way to add a bridge without it being too noticeable. And then I'll probably add one through this portion of the eye to hold at least one side of the eyebrow in place. So we got one bridge, but I think what we need is at least two, if not a couple more. So another place we could potentially add a bridge is through the bottom of the eye to the nose, across here like that. It's a pretty long bridge, but that would also hold the nose in place. And then we could also add one through here just to make it a bit stronger. Usually if I have a bridge going from one side, I'd like to add another one from the other side, so at least it's being held by two opposing points. But in this particular one, it's going to be a bit tricky because there's nowhere out here that I can sort of go without hiding it easily. And then for the eyebrow, I really want one at the top as well, going in sort of the other direction as well. If I add one here, I think you might notice it, unless you take your eraser and just make it look like it's part of the artwork. So rounding off those edges a little bit, softening them a bit, so at least it doesn't look so obvious. When you zoom out, it dips in there, but it doesn't look like, you know, it's just a straight edge. You want to sort of disguise them so they're sort of part of the artwork. So now we have one at the top of the eyebrow, one connecting it to the eye, and a couple to the eye, which isn't so bad. I'm wondering if there's somewhere we can add a couple more, because at least this end of the eyebrow is going to be really flimsy, I think. That's going to wave around all over the place. So I think what I might have to do is just one through the end of the eye, connecting it through there, and that will definitely help a bit. And then what else can I do? I think that's about it, because there's nowhere really I can take my bridges out in this direction, because that would just be too obvious. We can't hide it. So I'm gonna take my chances with this, and hopefully it's enough. I don't think it's quite strong enough. You really do need a bridge going in that direction, but I'll take my chances for today. Okay, so now I can switch that layer off, call it done, and see if we can add some bridges to this layer as well, because we definitely need some around the eyebrow and the eye, just like the previous one. So if I switch on the layer above, I can see an opportunity right away to add one across the bridge of the nose, just like the previous one. So if I'm going to make a nice big one through here, you can see that's a nice strong bridge that will definitely hold that side of the eyebrow. And let's see where else we can hold one. I can definitely do one through the center of the eyebrow and the eye without making it too obvious. So now we've got two bridges, one there, and then where else can we add one? I think we'll have to add one through this edge of the eye to the bottom of the nose, just like on the previous layer. And that's looking pretty good. That's pretty well hidden under the layer above it. I'm just going to make these a little bit wider so they get held in place really nicely. And then for all these little pieces here, I'm not going to add any bridges to those. What I'm going to do instead is switch off the other layers, select a random space on the transparent layer, Ctrl-Shift-I to inverse that selection, hit I, take a big brush and then just fill in these little spots. Because for the most part we won't really need them. It will simplify the stencil a little bit, but I don't think we're going to lose any major details. So we just fill that in to clean that up a bit. It's a nice quick and easy way of doing it. And then hit Ctrl-D, switch on the other layers below it, and I think that's looking pretty good. Switch on the layer above. Okay, and then with this one, I don't think we'll need any bridges because we're getting to that point where it's sort of the highlights. So for this one, I'm just gonna select the transparent layer, Ctrl-Shift-I, select I to select this color, and then fill it in to fill in these spots on the inside of it. Because we won't be able to paint those. Oh, that one we could probably keep. So if I just grab an eraser, add a little bridge through there, done. That's a nice little extra detail. And then select the layer above, and then I see one little piece I want to keep, which is just this area through there. So I just delete a little area there, and we'll probably be able to get that extra bit of detail in there. But for the rest of it, I'm going to select out here in space, Ctrl-Shift-I, inverse the selection, I to select the white, and then fill that in as well. And that's it. I think that's all of our layers sort of cleaned up for the most part. And that's looking pretty good. We haven't lost any major details. Oh, no, we missed a spot. I can see one already. If I go down here, you can sort of see that little thing, this little shadow under the nose, where it creates a little form. If I grab an eraser, I can get a little bit of extra detail in here. But then select I. The one next to it I probably won't get, so I can fill that one in there. And that's it. That's most of the layers cleaned up. Let's just go check the black quickly. See if we need to clean that up much. No, that's looking pretty good. We don't need any bridges on this layer either, so we can go select, out in space, Ctrl-Shift-I, and then B for black. We'll just fill that in quickly. And that's it. All of our layers are pretty much done and ready to be cut out on the Cricut, just like that. It's quick and simple. And now what we can do is start exporting this to cut out on our Cricut. So the way I like to do that is go back down to my first layers. So I save them out in the same order I paint them. So with this one, I go File, Export, Quick Export as PNG, so we get the background as a transparent, which is really important. And then what I'll do is I go to my desktop, create a new folder. I can call this Rock Stencil. Double select that. Go Layer 1, Dark Gray. And then progressively going through our layers, saving them all out, ready to cut out. Okay, we're done. This is all you need to do in Photoshop. So now we can jump across to the Cricut software and start cutting out all of our stencils. So let's open that up, our Cricut design space. Okay, once you're in the Cricut design space, you just click on the new project up in the top corner, so you get a new canvas. And then down here on the left, you click the upload button, and then upload image here, browse, go to the location of where you saved all of your stencils, so it'll be the rock stencil. Okay, that's better. Let's cut out our first one, our dark gray. Doesn't really matter which one of these you click. I'm just click moderate, and then we hit continue. Because we saved this out as a PNG, there's nothing we need to do here to remove the background. That's already done. So we just get apply and continue. And then on this one, all we need to do is select cut image, continue, and then it will be uploaded here. So we select this and then add to canvas. All right, now the next really important thing to do is make sure we cut all of our documents out at exactly the same dimensions. So when we go to actually paint them, all the markers will line up and it'll come out looking really awesome. So for this, I think I've got mine set in metric. So I'll go 297. So it'll be 29. Let's try that. So 29 centimeters by 40, which is the maximum size you can actually fit onto a Cricut mat. And then once we've done that, we can hit make it, and we'll see a little preview here. So we've already maxed out that, and we can just hit continue. All right, now I need to switch on my Cricut and set up the material. So let's get onto that part. So one question I get a lot is what material I use to cut out my stencils. I use these little quill packs of 200 GSM card. They come in a pack of 25. They're pretty cheap and they're A3, so I tend to use these quite a lot. And I tend to use them with green cutting mats because they have the right amount of tack. So just take your material and stick it down to your mat. Just like that. Nice and easy. Make sure it's straight, nice and centered. And then you're ready to go. And then on the machine, what I like to do is make sure I have my material set to custom on the machine. And then load it up. And then on the computer, I'll just select medium cardstock, which matches up to the material really well at 216 GSM. And then hit the go button on the machine. And that came out super quick and easy. So another little tip I can give you guys is rather than pulling your stencils right off the mat, what will happen with this material is it'll actually tend to curl. So what you can do is flip it over and actually pull this cutting mat off of your stencil, and that stops your actual stencil from curling and making it a little round. In some areas it'll be unavoidable. You can see in that corner it's sort of rounded up a bit. But generally this technique works really well for the more complex stencils as well. So now we can just do the rest of our layers.
So here's layers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and 6 all cut out and ready to go. It only took me about 30 minutes to cut them all out, and we're ready to throw some paint on them. So for this video I'll be doing my stencils in the grays. I'll make a note of all the grays I used in the description below if you want to get the same ones. And then I'll also be using a bunch of random colors for the background. Along with that I'll be using my mask, which is pretty essential for stencil art. Gotta make sure to look after your lungs. And my favorite blue dot caps. Along with that I'll also be using a hairdryer. So let's get painting.